Stugotz, the Diddy stories this weekend that were coming out and the settlement, all of it I found to be quite a labyrinth, quite a web. The idea that Diddy would settle so quickly when he had a lawyer and money advantage that could have possibly allowed him to fight suggested to me that there was truth there. And I think a lot of people were jumping to that conclusion. But there's a trigger warning here. In a federal lawsuit Thursday, the singer Cassie claimed that she was, quote, trapped in a cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking. She alleged that Diddy raped her, punched, beat, kicked, and stomped her, forced her to perform sex acts on male prostitutes while Diddy masturbated and filmed them, that he got her addicted to drugs, that he blew up, confirmed that. Diddy vehemently denied the claim. His lawyer said Cassie had been demanding $30 million for 6 months. But Friday came the settlement. Justin Tinsley is a senior sports and culture reporter for ESPN's Andscape. He's the author of It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him. Justin, thank you for making the time. You've also written about hip-hop's bad history with the Me Too movement and the misogyny that has plagued the industry. So let's begin here. How surprised were you, and thank you for joining us, by the details in these allegations?
You know, for one, thank you for having me, Dan and Stu. I guess the answer is yes, I was surprised, and no, I wasn't surprised. Yes, because anytime you start a lawsuit with a trigger warning, you're thinking like, what the hell am I about to get myself into? But I don't think anybody could have imagined the details that were in there. So yes, that's what I was shocked by. But no, because what I've learned in my time covering the music industry, hip hop and far beyond, is that it's ran off money, power, and respect. And ironically, that's the title of a classic song in Diddy's universe. But because of that, it can be a very dark place. And we've heard the horror stories about the music industry as long as the music industry's been alive. So unfortunately, there's this dark underbelly where people are made to feel like they're disposable, some lawsuit. And the sad part is, I don't think we'll ever truly know the full extent of which.
Is it fair to jump to conclusions on the speed with which Diddy settled this?
I think, especially from the outside looking in, I think it is fair because we'll never know all the details that were inside. But you know, when I've spoken to people who I trust inside the legal industry, and I'm like, is it? I honestly ask the same question, Dan. Like, is it fair for me to assume that there was a lot of truth within this lawsuit? And the resounding answer was, it would be fair to assume that. Without getting themselves like in any sort of jeopardy or anything. But that's, I think we all had the same reaction when we saw that.
How fearful a persona was Diddy? Because that isn't something that I associated with him necessarily.
Yeah. So when we talk about instilling fear into people and just the urban legends that come with it, for a long time, that's been associated with Suge Knight, the former head of Death Row Records, and we all understand the history that comes with the East and West Coast bad boy and Death Row. But the thing is, when you cover the music industry for so long, like you always hear stories, flag against Puffy in terms of just his history in business was just how he allegedly treated his artists with bad contracts or publishing rights. And so that was the big one that he's his business with artists is always kind of up in the air, and then it's like maybe he's hard to work with. But then you always hear of intimate rumors, and a lot of times they're just that. But when I read this lawsuit, it now you have to incorporate those details when discussing the life and the legacy of Sean Combs, because this is just as important as launching Bad Boy in 1993 and helping launch the careers of Mary J. Blige and Jodeci and like that. This is just as important, if not more important than anything else.
What are we to make of hip hop and its public reckoning with the times changing? You see on one hand rappers like DaBaby effectively be canceled, like their careers genuinely hurt by their scandals. Yep. But we see artists like Diddy continue being in the public eye despite whispers being around them We have Snoop Dogg unabashed about what he said in the past. We also see other artists kind of move away from what they used to do. And Chris Brown's still a gigantic artist. Does the audience for hip hop just kind of pick and choose depending on the catalog?
Yeah, so this is a conversation that's been had in various forms for so long because there's not always one answer to it. When I think of a cultural awakening, this the people in power, is the fans. We're looking at it like, hey, look, this is a major scar that we can't continue to willingly deepen, and there are multiple scars. So we can't say protect women. We can't say, protect these Black lives, protect victims, and not follow up with tangible action behind it. And in a broad sense, that's what reckoning is, right? Tangible action behind like an epiphany. So does that happen? That's a totally different reality. And honestly, man, I just don't know. But I saw this video of the rapper Slim Thug talking yesterday on the Cassie and Diddy situation, saying like victims should speak out in real time when this abuse is happening, and it should be a time limit. Like, look, in an ideal world, would it be great if victims spoke up immediately after being abused? Sure, but that's not even remotely realistic. And what it does is create this fallacy of abuse being easy to get out of, when it's not rooted in greed and power and the worst forms of manipulation. So, there were allegations, in this lawsuit about medical records not even going to Cassie. You understand where this fear comes from. You understand how this could happen for so long. And you understand that there are time limits to everything. Hence why this wasn't a criminal case and rather a civil case. So I think, like, if we're going to have a reckoning about this and multiple other issues within the genre, part of it comes with just making ourselves knowledgeable on matters such as these, saying, hey, you know what? I was wrong at first, but I can't continue to be wrong, and I can't continue to allow anyone else to be wrong either.
Will this impact his career moving forward?
That's the $10 million question, Stu, honestly. The answer is, I think in the short term, I believe it will. This really, from a business standpoint, this really impacts how you can be nominated for awards. This really makes, all the goodwill that he had going into this, from donating $1 million to Jackson State, or to, getting the Global Honoree Award at the VMAs, or the Key from the City from Mayor Eric Adams earlier this year. At a short term, I think it will, from a business portfolio standpoint. Now, long term, will this continue to help evolve a much necessary conversation around domestic violence, around intimate partner violence and things of that nature? I hope so, but just in the past, it doesn't give me the greatest confidence in the world.
I just Super Bowl halftime. He had stuff in his past.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see when Kanye drops his album, what exactly the audience will be for it, what the cultural reaction will be to it. Hip hop is a little bit different. They play by different rules, and the marketplace does speak for itself, and the metrics are undeniable. There was a time where something like this would be good for one's brand, and now, with regards to Diddy, this was somebody that just dropped an album that was trying to come back into the pop culture zeitgeist. Not that he had ever really left, but to be a relevant portion of the pop culture zeitgeist. Typically, we've seen this before in Hollywood. When one story's out there, and there's a lot of allegations here, there's no shortage. If you look at social media, no shortage of people willing to talk about their experiences with Diddy. And now that this is out there, investigators and journalists are going to be poking around. Might this be the beginning of problems for Diddy?
I mean, just how we've seen things play out in the past, you would think that, like, oh man, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? There has to be. That's what the logic says. But, we'll see. And, it makes you go back and look at something like giving your bad boy artist they're publishing after all these years, and a move that was called surprising by multiple outlets. And you're like, well, a lot of allegations towards Diddy have lived on the internet, have lived on YouTube, have lived on social media for years. So, it'll be interesting to see if, like you said, man, if this is the start of, a really, really major legal headache for Diddy, or if this was just a one-off. And even if it is just a one-off, what is the impact of this one-off? Because guess what? We all saw that lawsuit. We all know the details that were in it. They're going to live on the internet for the rest of all of our lives in some form. So how does this really impact him? I wish I knew the answer, but I just don't until we see it. But I think immediately in the short term, we won't be hearing a lot from him for right now.
I'm curious. I'm going to ask you kind of a personal question here because
Yeah.
I think it'd be unfair to make you speak for hip hop here. I know how I experienced certain musicians that I had held in high regard, had an affinity for. Some like Ryan Adams, who I've just totally stopped listening to. Others that are a little bit trickier, like David Bowie has his history. Prince has his history. Michael Jackson's one of these artists. Like, man, there was a lot there, but he had some songs, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you go about some of these things when you listen back to some of the hip hop that you grew up listening to. I know Eminem fans, certainly because he was among the most vocal to public eye, certainly one that met a lot of scrutiny. How do you experience that era of hip hop? How do you view these artists now that you've gotten older, these artists that you've grown up and trying to reconcile with a different time? Hair metal, I think, also has some of this too, where, we knew how Motley Crue treated women, and Motley Crue's still headlining festivals and all that. And I wonder if hip hop is going to be judged by, if certain acts are going to be judged by the time and the morals where they peaked, and how does that age?
That is it's such a fascinating question, and it's one that I think about all the time because, look, Lord knows I'm not perfect. I'll probably tell you some of my favorite artists right now, and I might look like a hypocrite, but I have to judge this on for me, I do it on case-by-case basis in a lot of cases. And a lot of times I make the same decision, but like for somebody like R. Kelly, I used to always play R. Kelly's music. And then, I realized what my role is in helping him further, whatever it is that he was doing. So I had to just come to the realization one day. I was like, man, as much as I like this music back in the day, I can't continue to listen to it. And so for him, I was like, I completely put him off to the side. And I think about arguably my favorite artist of all time, Tupac Shakur. And, we understand the life that he lived and all the great things. Assault case in 1994 and, how that played out. And I have to, reconcile that in my head, knowing that, this is an undeniable and irreplaceable part of his story, just as much as the great music or the great interviews or the things that he stood for did. So I think for a lot of people within hip hop, you're never really going to see a universal opinion on this person can stay, this person has to go, mainly because each person's standards for what you can accept are so different. Like my standards are different from, my next door neighbor or even the person down the street. And as much as I try to, here's how I feel about the situation, and here's the reason why I feel about the situation, I can't expect everyone to feel like that because it's just never going to happen at the same time. So I can't explain why some can stay and some can't. Maybe like you said, it is a time period. Maybe it is, like you said, just how much you really like the music, and you can be willing to place things to the side whereas some people can't. It's an imperfect science because human beings are literally the definition of imperfect. So
2 questions with the less than a minute that we have left. What was Diddy's reputation behind the scenes and in the lawsuit that includes rape and blowing up kid tales that jumped out to you from the lawsuit?
Man, it was just one paragraph after another. Like you always hear of the intimate rumors between people in the music industry, and you never know how true it actually is. But then once you start reading, like, again, like the medical records being sent to him, her being sent away for weeks at a time to allegedly recover from injuries, allegedly blowing up Kid Cudi's car, and then getting Kid Cudi's representation to confirm that in the article. Like I was like, this is reading something like a villain script. And I was shocked at the depth of it. I understood what the red flags were about Diddy, but the depth of that, I don't think anybody saw coming.
What can you tell us about the relationship that 50 Cent and Diddy had? Because 50 Cent has been trying to tell people a variety of things for a while.
50 and Diddy have not seen eye to eye in a long, long time. And if you're familiar with 50 Cent on social media, every now and then he will always poke fun at Diddy. I don't even have enough time to give you the full history between them two. But if there's anybody in hip hop in terms of artists that are going to speak out against Diddy, for better and for worse, it will be 50 Cent.
senior sports and culture reporter for ESPN's Andscape. Can't believe you're already senior, sir. I remember when you were junior. Thank
Too
you.
young, man.
Thank
Yeah.
you for
I'll
being on.
always be a junior. Thank you, fellas. Thank you for having me on.